Hey, good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Yeah, okay, the first one is always a little, light. The next one, you guys are all ready? Okay, so how you doing? Yeah, if I kept going, eventually would we get amazingly loud? I don't know. Yeah, okay. We'll try it at the end if there's time, okay? So you have something to look forward to. All right, so this is Powering a Lean Startup with Drupal. That's the name of this talk, and my name is Chris Shattuck, and I'm a horrible parent. I just wanted to let you guys know I practice my talks on my 4-year-old son, it's kind of brutal, right? But it's really interesting as well because we end up having this conversation. It's just a bunch of non sequiturs, and I get a sense of how us as adults might react to certain, aspects of a presentation, right? Part of us is still 4 years old, so even though we're not going to start talking about Mario Brothers midway through a talk, we might feel like we want to, and so I think it's good practice. So I threw in some spaceships and some kittens into this talk, hopefully, to entice him, but also, maybe you guys will get some benefit from it too. Yeah? All right. Okay, so this is the URL up there if you want to listen. I recorded it. That's even worse, right? I recorded the talk with my kid, and so you can hear the crazy things that a 4-year-old says. All right, so the reason I'm giving this talk is because I run a startup called Build a Module. I create video tutorials to help people learn Drupal, and I've been working on it full-time for a couple of years now. And when I come to Drupal events like this one or Drupal camps, I end up talking with people quite a bit about the business side of this because most of us are entrepreneurs on some level or trying to figure out what to do next. And so, we draw from each other in terms of how to deal with the logistics around that or how to, what are the tips and tricks on making the steps up to running a successful startup. So this talk is really a response to that. It's some of the best advice or tips I can give as you work your way towards a startup yourself. How many of you guys are interested in running a startup yourself? Awesome. And how many of you are right now? You're doing it. Living the dream. Okay. Okay, doing it. That's two different things, right? Okay. So that's really great. That's really great to hear. I hope there's something of value to you here, or maybe you'll recognize some of this in yourself. Part of this has to do with lean, so the lean startup ethos and all. Part of it has to do with Drupal, ways that Drupal can help with the process. But then there's other things too that have to do with maybe the softer side of ourselves. That sounds weird, but we'll get to some good stuff hopefully. I'd like to begin by saying thank you. So anybody out there a member of Build a Module or has been a member at some point? Okay, thank you so much. Build a Module has become sustainable in such a way that I'm able to create a pretty flexible workflow. And a couple months ago, my dad got pretty sick. This is a little personal, right? But my dad got sick, but I was able to basically drop everything I was doing and help him get back on his feet. And that was a really valuable experience for me and probably the best payoff that running a startup has had for me so far. Really, is there any better payoff than being able to help the people around us when they need it, right? So this is part of looking forward, looking ahead and seeing why we want to start up. This might be one thing, but for me personally, I just need to say thank you to everybody who had a part in that, which you did by just supporting me, so thanks. Okay, so I'd like to give you just a couple-minute background on how I got to this point. Hopefully it provides some relevance. It will at least be one story of how an individual, makes career moves and blunders or whatever, but I'll try to keep it brief. So I graduated from college with a degree in sociology, which basically means nothing, right? Any sociologists in the room? Yeah, right. We find other things to do to actually make money. So I worked at a campground. Yeah, right? It's a natural transition. So I started working at a campground and interviewing people as they came in to stay at a campsite to ask them what they did for a living, to get a sense of maybe what I might actually really want to do with my life. And web development sounded pretty cool. I had a computer, which was all you need in order to do it, basically. And I always wanted to geek out a bit, so I thought I'd go this route. So I spent a couple of slow winters working on learning coding, learning design, and how to maybe market, how to deal with clients, and started asking around, seeing if anybody needed a site. This one gallery said they did. I bid for the job, I got it, did the work, they were happy with it, even though I was totally noob on it. And when I tallied up the numbers, I was making 4 times more per hour than I was at the campground, so I quit. It makes sense, right? And I'd like to say I went into freelancing full-time, but what I actually did was I went into trying to network full-time, which is a lot more miserable. So, I went to networking meetings, I signed up for Toastmasters and got up at 5:30 in the morning to try to talk with people, kind of crappy things like that. After 6 months, though, I had enough business that I was able to pay the bills. And so my wife and I were able to buy a little home and pay the rent and stuff like that. During this time, I lived with my in-laws to kind of cut down on expenses, which was helpful. But it was nice to move out to. So I freelanced for quite a while before I started building a content management system to make it easier to create these websites over and over again for different clients, which is a very common progression. And then at some point I wanted help with it, and after finally going on Google and looking oh yeah, I discovered Google about this time too, found out that a lot of people had done this already, including this one project, Drupal. And after looking at their architecture and talking with some people, I decided to go to Drupal completely. So I read Pro Drupal Development, which was a really valuable book at the time. It was Drupal 5. And I just started doing all my projects in Drupal, which was kind of just went in cold turkey, which was probably the best way to learn. So about 6 months into working with Drupal, I got offered a job to work on a large-scale Drupal project. It had a budget of over $1 million, which to me was a pretty big deal at the time. And it would still be a big deal for me now. But I'd get to work with a team of Drupal people, which is kind of a really exciting thing if you've been freelancing for a while. So I decided to do it. So I worked on this job for about a year. I learned a lot of really important stuff. But it kind of reached a cap of both the challenges and the income level I could reach as a Drupal developer, which is substantial, right? If you're a Drupal developer, there's good news for you. But there's still a cap on what you can make. And so I wanted to figure out what was next. I kind of wanted some new challenges. And I had read this book called The 4-Hour Workweek at this time. How many of you have read that book? Yeah? Okay. Quite a few of you. If you haven't, pick it up. There's something in it for you that's kind of fun. But one of the big takeaways for me was this idea that in order to break through the cap of what you can make if you're selling your time, you have to have a product. You have to have something that you make once and then can sell many, many times over. And that's the only way. That's the only way you're going to do it. So coming out of this job, I split my time between 2 things. I started subcontracting for freelance shops so that basically I didn't have as much to think about and I could rely on the number of hours that I'd be working. And then the rest of the time I started prototyping the first Build a Module site. And I recorded 30 video tutorials on Drupal development, how to program, and put it out there with a shopping cart and let a few people in the Drupal community know that it existed. And I really didn't know what to expect, right? But I got some orders that came through the site. And I was excited and just kind of waiting for their email back asking for their money because it wasn't perfect. But nobody asked for their money back, which was a great illustration to me of one of the lean startup principles, which is that you put something out there before it's perfect because the market will tell you what it wants to make it better. So I just kind of got to use that. I didn't purposely do it. It was just a time thing, but it worked. So after looking at the numbers, I wasn't making a ton of money that way, but I thought that maybe if I could make enough content for enough subsections of the Drupal community and work on some of the problems that we face with video learning, like it's kind of hard on some levels, then maybe I could make a living doing this. So I stopped working altogether, and I spent 3 months building another version of the Build a Module site. I recorded a couple hundred video tutorials tackling some other subjects, and I put it out there. And I gave myself 6 months. I said, if in 6 months I'm able to pay the bills, I'll keep going. I'll keep working on it. Otherwise, I'll go back to the drawing board and figure out what went wrong, try something else. After 3 months, I hit that point. I didn't have very high expenses, which helped, but I hit that point, and I've been working on it ever since. Okay, so this hopefully that wasn't too long. But for one, this shape might look familiar, and I just wanted to sort of explain why, and also throw in a spaceship because the 4-year-olds in us need spaceships sometimes. But this sort of shape is all about states of being, like careers, what I'm doing as a job, but then the transitions. And the transitions is pretty much what I want to talk about for the rest of this time, because those are the hard parts, making those moves between things. So there's a lot about my story that's idiosyncratic, right? It's just me. It's just, everybody's stories is going to be different, so, we'll all tell it differently. But one thing that's the same are these transitions. We have to make transitions from one step to another step in order to continue improving our lot, seeking whatever it is that we're seeking. So there's 3 things that I think go into making a transition actually work, and they're the same for all of us, regardless of how old you are, regardless of if you have families, regardless of if you're just out of college or just hitting retirement. It's the same for all of us. And the first is that we have to see the next step, the next thing that we're going to do, as less risky than than where we're currently at. Otherwise, we're not going to make a move, right? If you see freelancing as less risky and you're an employee, then you're not going to make that move because there's nothing in you that's going to support that. So you have to kind of figure out how you can see that next transition. If you know you need to make it, you have to figure out how to see it as less risky than the thing that you're currently doing. So that's the first part. The second part is that you need money, because transitions take time. During a transition, you have to learn some stuff. You have to build some social networks. There might be a variety of things you have to do, and that takes time. You're going to burn through expenses during that process. But really, it's just time. You're just buying time. So saving up some money for those transitions is also a necessity. Of course, you can't save a ton. Most of us can't save a ton for each transition, so we also have to set kind of a time limit and say, okay, within this time period, we'll give it a shot. And then we just have to save up some more and try again if it doesn't work. And the final thing that we need is a little bit maybe harder to put your finger on, but what stops most of us from successfully making a transition is that we back out before we complete it. We get scared because as you sort of make a leap from one thing to another, from one job to another, you're in the air. There's no solid footing. And so during that time, it's really easy to just say, okay, I want to go back to something I know that's comfortable. So we have to do what we can to increase our stamina for uncertainty. We have to be okay with that process of not really knowing what's going to happen next, because that's the only way that we'll be able to make those transitions. And so I want to talk about some strategies for building that. If you isolate that colony ship of my life into sort of the important phases that I think are generally applicable to us all, there's 2 big transitions, I think, that I suggest making. We can always go from employeeship to a startup. We can always make that jump. But I suggest freelancing in the middle for a variety of reasons, which I'll talk about. So these are the big transitions between employeeship and freelancing, and between freelancing and a startup. But why are we pointing to a startup, though, as the sort of end-all, as the thing that we want to build up to, or that we're building? Many of you are in the process of building it now, which is super cool. So why? Well, if you break it down, there's probably a whole list of things that you think you're going to get from it, right? One is that you might make more money. Well, you're going at it to make more money, partially at least. But that only really satisfies us up to a certain point. After that point, it's the amount of impact that we have on the world. It's how we can change the lives of other people. It's the good we can do. Like, that's a much stronger driver for us. Once we've reached a baseline of income, that's going to be much bigger. And finally, we kind of might run out of challenges as employees or as freelancers, and running a startup is going to give us more to work with. We'll try some new things. We'll have to solve some new problems. But I think all of these things lead up to one big goal, which is not unhappiness. So I did a Google search for happy, and I'm like, I got to throw that up there, right? For you, those of you in the back, she looks super unhappy. I don't know what's going on there. But this cat looks much happier in contrast. Yeah. I promised kittens, right? So even though we have these goals to change our circumstances in terms of money we make, in terms of the job we have, whatever, all of it arguably leads up to greater happiness. We want to enjoy life more, right? If we didn't have to do these things in order to enjoy our life more, we would skip it and go right to the part where we're enjoying life more. So in addition to happiness sort of being our goal, and I'm using happy loosely, right? Not all of us like that word because it comes with baggage. But if you can think of it as well-being or enjoyment of life, whatever sort of works for you. In addition to it being the goal, it's also a currency. It's also fuel we use to make transitions that are challenging. Because if we can enjoy ourselves in the process of jumping from one point to another, we have a lot longer to make that transition before we exhaust ourselves, right? So fostering happiness, cultivating happiness in whatever way we can is a big deal for making sure that we don't bail too early before we actually make a transition. So on the one hand, this sounds like, like a little foo-foo, right? Because yeah, of course, everything on TV tells us what we can do to be happier. Everything around us is telling us that we can be happier if we do X, right? So I think it's important to break down the pieces that we know about happiness, because that helps us make choices about what can cultivate our happiness. And there are some things we know from studies that have been done. So one of them is really interesting, I think, which is that about 50% of our happiness level, this is based on a study that they did of identical and fraternal twins, about 50% of our happiness level is genetic. So that might be bad news for some of you. For those of you, I realize this, for those of you for whom it is bad news, you might not have a lot of happiness in this 50% genetic area, so I'm sorry. It's kind of a feedback loop, right? But there's 50% left, so this is the good news. And of that 50%, 40% is intentional activity. It's stuff that we decide to do at any given time. So there's at least a handful of you out there right now who might be unhappy for any particular reason, right? I'm not talking about what you were hoping I'd talk about. Maybe the guy next to you is snoring, something like that. Well, those things can be changed by simply executing your control over your environment. You can just nudge the guy next to you. You can go do something else or pull out your computer, right? There's options for you almost at any time when there are conditions that are making you unhappy. There's something you can do to make it happier. So 40% of our joy sort of comes from those intentional actions, which is amazing. That's a lot of choice that we have. So this little orange slice, which you may or may not be able to read, is our circumstances. About only 10% of our happiness level comes from our circumstances. So this is how attractive we are. This is how much money we have. This is where in the world we live. This is what job we have. All of these things add up to about 10%, which is really weird because I think most of us, when we think about or describe how we're trying to improve our lives, kind of point to something in this sort of on this list and say, yeah, that's what I'm going for, But it's really not going to have that tremendous of an effect on us, which I think is amazing to know. And you may not believe it, but think about it for a little while. Maybe it'll sort of sink in. So another thing that makes us happy are puppies and babies, especially puppies pushing babies up. I'm just kidding. That does make me happy, but this picture illustrates a broader principle, which is that of the things that we can do intentionally to make us happier, one of the big things is helping other people. It actually releases the same chemicals in our body when we do something for somebody else as when we drink juice or do drugs. Those same positive chemicals are released. So why is it so much fun to help people? Well, it's because it's actually doing something physiologically to us. So if we can integrate that with what we do in our work lives especially, then where sometimes we don't always have the opportunities to do those things, then we're going to get a lot more joy out of the process. So this comes into play when I start talking about Drupal in a bit. So money makes a difference in our happiness level, but only to a certain point. At about $50,000, we reach the peak of how much money can affect our happiness, $50,000 a year as income. At that point, we're meeting all of our big needs, right? Where you don't have to worry about the electricity being turned off, our kids are fed, we're golden. Beyond that point, between $50,000 and $5 million, the happiness level of people increases only a small amount. It is a bit of an amount, it's a little bit, but it's not huge in any way. So I think that's important, because if we're making moves in our careers in order to make more money, then chances are there's not going to be a big payoff there for us if that's our only reason or our primary reason for it. For a lot of us, we want to make more money so that we can save more money, so that we increase our security levels, so that we can get closer to retirement, so that we can do some big things in the future, right? Well, that's another story, right? So we're amazing. You are amazing. All of you guys are amazing. I could have told you that without these slides, but the slides help too. And one of the things that makes us amazing is that when big changes happen to us, we adjust to them really fast. It's called hedonic adaptation. And so this comes into play in a really positive way when bad things happen to us, like we get diagnosed with a chronic disease. Well, after being diagnosed with a chronic disease, within 1 or 2 months, many of us will get right back to the same level of happiness we were before. It has no impact on our level of happiness. But if really big things happen, really big good things happen to us, like we win the lottery, which is arguably good, for those people who do get positive feelings from that, they go back to the same level of happiness about a year later. So if you're saving up for money for retirement, for big things down the road, then chances are you're going to get some payoff in terms of happiness, but it's not going to be long term. It's going to expire. You're going to adjust. So you may find that focusing on the sooner payoffs in happiness, your day-to-day stuff, you're going to end up having a greater net level of happiness. And that's what you need. This is a currency, right? We're trying to get more happy so that we can do difficult things and make our way towards doing something where we make more money and have a greater impact on the world. So, okay, so these are all interesting things. Anybody find these interesting? Yeah? All right. Anybody not find these interesting? Okay, sorry. That's a cruel question to ask. Okay, so these people are happy because they were asked to jump and smile. But they look happy for that reason. But some people are actually happy at their jobs, which if you're an employee, some people are happy doing that. And I'm completely jealous. I've never had a job where I was really satisfied as an employee. But if you have one of those, then your goal is achieved, right? And the whole idea of making multiple transitions to get to the point where you're running a startup, maybe that's not very attractive because you've got everything you need. But for most of us, there's something lacking with employeeship. So I wanted to stick freelancing and employeeship into a cage and kind of have them fight in a sort of a bullet-pointed way up here. So let's compare being an employee to being a freelancer, kind of see what the benefits might be to freelancing and the problems with employeeship. So as an employee, your time is dictated in a big way. So you have a certain number of hours you have to work, you have meetings you have to go to, but as a freelancer, you get to set your hours. For the most part, freelancers tend to work more, actually more net hours, but they get a lot more control of when those hours are. So you get to craft your life in such a way so that you can take advantage of things that you'll get joy out of. Like if it's a really nice day, you can just take a break and take advantage of that. You can take a month off to work on something. So we get that advantage as freelancers. As an employee, and by the way, if there's any bosses out there, I don't mean to rag on you guys at all. You're probably all awesome bosses, and you're awesome boss, and your employees are probably all really happy. But just in case there's other people here who aren't, this might outline some of those things, right? Okay, disclaimer complete. So as an employee, the skills that you build are dictated by what's needed in your job. And those skills may be very outdated. You may be working with old technology that's only good within the company that you're working for. Whereas when you're a freelancer, you have to choose skills that are saleable, that are needed in the marketplace. And you also get to choose the skills you want. So these are skills that you may use later as sort of fuel for your startups, or to build other things that you've always wanted to build. So you get to choose what skills to build, which is a big deal. As an employee, your job is making your bosses happy. really. There's kind of the primary target. But as a freelancer, your job is to make the market happy because you're dealing with the people who are actually buying stuff. And so you get to know where the inefficiencies are in your work. So if you do a lot of stuff and the people who you're freelancing for don't really find it valuable, well, you just discovered a big way that you can save on time. And if you'll find little things that you can do to make your clients happy that don't take a lot of time, right? So those kinds of things, those type of insights that you develop while freelancing mean that those are things that you can take when you start to build a startup. There are ways that you can identify needs in the marketplace and how to sort of deal with the market. Okay, so finally, when you're an employee, your income is dictated not only by the market, but by politics within the company. Like you can only make a certain amount, you shouldn't make more than somebody who's been working longer than you, right? Those types of things. But as a freelancer, what you charge is dictated by your own decision and also by what the market will pay. So you can work your way up to making the highest possible amount you can for the skills that you have in whatever industry you're in, which is inevitably going to be more, sometimes significantly more than you can make as an employee. Does all that make sense? Yeah, you guys good? It's late, isn't it? It's like 4:30. You guys are like, I'm ready for dinner. You know, my brain is full. Yeah. So feel free to just use my voice as sort of massage on your head. You don't even have to hear the words. Just be like, massage that information in, get it in order. That's totally fine, okay? But what's that? Oh, the video will be online anyway. Why are you guys here? So I tell yeah, that's so funny. I should have started this out. I tell everybody I meet, don't go to any sessions. Just talk to people out there. These will be recorded. So if y'all want to just bail now, it's totally fine. I'll finish this so you guys can listen to it later. It's totally fine. But just in case you feel bad about walking out now, let me continue talking about freelancing. Because based on the previous slide, freelancing is awesome, right? But actually, freelancing is super tricky. How many people here have dabbled in freelancing or do freelancing all the time? Oh, yeah. So you know what I mean. I should see a bunch of nods with this. So freelancing is really hard, and here's why. One is that if you imagine a teeter-totter, and there's holes in the teeter-totter, and there's spikes underneath each teeter-totter, and you're going down like this, and then you're like, well, maybe the other side is more comfortable, and you go over there and you go down, and spikes are just coming up through the teeter-totter. That's kind of like freelancing, right? Anybody? Okay, so the idea here is that we're either really busy or we're not busy enough, and both are uncomfortable situations. We either have too much being thrown at us, we have too many clients to deal with, or we don't have enough and we're panicking because, oh my gosh, I have to pay the bills, that type of thing. So kind of uncomfortable. It seems like we're never in the middle. And there's a lot more factors. We have a lot more clients we have to deal with. We have taxes. We have logistics, right? So a lot more usually than you have to deal with as an employee. And finally, one of the biggest things is that by definition, freelancing is something that we do by ourselves. And this means that, you know, we could be working, what ends up happening is you end up working really hard, kind of all by yourself, and then one day you look up and you're like, what? Where did everybody go? And you realize you haven't seen like your friends in a month, and you just get disconnected. Whereas when you're an employee, a lot of times you're part of a community. You get to see people at lunch and blah, 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 right? And there's nothing more stressful to human beings than being separated from our communities. So all this adds up to a whole lot of stress, which makes freelancing not sustainable for most of us. So I have some tips, some ways to maybe sustain working through the process of freelancing, and one of which is a way to look at it. So I see freelancing as startup school. So this helps orient you in a couple of ways. One is that it's time limited. We don't go to school. Most of us don't go to school forever, right? Unless we're really scared of the real world. But, you know, like most of us, it's a temporary thing. But also, our goal is to learn as much as possible through the process. It isn't to make it as easy as possible. We want to learn as much as we can so that we can use that information later to do something valuable. So we can learn most of the same things that we can freelancing before we run a startup. So we can learn all this stuff later when we're doing our startup. But the thing is that when you're freelancing, you get paid for it. Whereas when you're doing a startup and you're having to learn all this stuff, you don't get paid, so you have a much shorter time period to work with. Whereas freelancing, you can work and work until you're like, I know what I'm doing, I have ideas, I'm ready to go. Okay, so this is the big reason why I encourage freelancing. I've been talking all day too, so my words sort of slur. Okay, so one way that you can see freelancing as less risky than your current job is by getting some success in it. By getting a few jobs, or maybe even one job, like I got one job and I was sold, where you see that you can do it, where you can make people happy, you have the skills to do it. So consider going part-time with your work or just moonlighting for a while, which basically means don't do anything fun for a little bit and just work on something else and get a couple of successes, and that might be enough to encourage you to make the leap. I also encourage you not to work for huge clients. Huge clients insulate you a lot from the market still. Working with small clients gets you a lot closer to what's going on out there, and also gives you these mirrors of insight into what you're going to look like in a little bit when you run your startup. So you work for small clients, you get to see them make mistake after mistake, you get to see them have really weird ideas, and some of those weird ideas work, and most of them don't. And you get to derive a lot from that experience that you don't have to do yourself, right? So this is all stuff that you can pull into your toolbox when you get to the point where you're going to run your startup. So small clients are really irritating, but they teach you a lot. Okay, and some of them are really cool. So another thing that makes us amazing, besides hedonic adaptation, is that we rarely forget about stuff that's important to us. So if you thought, okay, I have to turn off the beans cooking on the oven in 20 minutes, like your brain will generally remind you of that. Maybe not 20 minutes from now, maybe like 2 hours from now, but it'll happen. Your brain will just like keep that and run it in this carousel. So as you've been sitting here, my guess is that most of you haven't been keeping count, but you've probably thought of several things that you have to do, either later, after you get done with this, when you get home from the camp, from the con, something like that. But the deal is that if you can take all that part of your brain that's dealing with reminding you constantly about what you have to do, and you get rid of, you use some other tool to remember all that stuff, then it frees up your brain to focus on what you're doing right now, which is much more valuable. So this book, Getting Things Done, how many of you have read Getting Things Done? Okay, so many of you have read it. Those of you who haven't, this book outlines how to do that, how to create a system to free up your brain to focus. So for me, this was an incredible thing to feel. And over time, entropy sets in, old habits come back, but I can always come back to this if I get overwhelmed, and it really helps a lot. One of the best moves I've ever made for my productivity is I started working on a treadmill desk about 5 years ago, and I work about half my day on it. So I walk, I don't run. I tried that. It didn't work so well. So I walk and I work at the same time, and it makes all the little aches and pains that build up in your body when you do desk jobs. It makes them go away, which is amazing. A lot of people lose a lot of weight on treadmill desks. There's a lot of benefits, right? So, anyways, that's my thing. I really like that. But spend some time with ergonomics. I mean, you can do all kinds of things with your office to make it better for your body, so your body is less of a distraction, less of a barrier between you and getting things done. So, play with standing desks, play with different heights of desks, play with sitting on balls, play with the light in the room, whatever you can think of. It's kind of fun to do, especially if you're sort of, you need a break from something. Just, mess around with your office, try some different things. It doesn't have to be expensive either. So my final tip is that sometimes we get to this point where we're overly stressed. We're so stressed out that we just can't really do the next thing. We just don't know what that is. Maybe we're depressed. Our bodies feel bad. It's just this point where you get completely blocked, and you can't get any work done. So when we get to that point, eventually something will happen that sort of unravels that, and we'll be fine. But if we can act on it fast, then you can kind of get by it fast. So my strategy, I have this algorithm in place. I think it's good to have an algorithm, whatever it is for you. It might be different than this. But I start sleeping better, so I try to get 8 hours of sleep and go to bed at 10:30, which apparently lines us up with our natural circadian rhythms. I start eating good meals every day. I don't eat any junk food. I start exercising a half an hour a day, doing cardiovascular or weights. And finally, I'll do a sanity check, which for me involves pulling up a word processor program and asking myself questions. And that might sound weird. I don't normally talk to myself. But really, we have psychology tells us we have these different parts of our heads that can kind of talk to ourselves, which is really valuable when it comes to working out problems. So I'll ask myself questions like, why do you feel so weird? Or what do you feel like you really have to get done today? Or maybe even deep stuff like, what is my ultimate goal in my life? Just to try to unravel what it is that's blocking me up. And doing all of this together helps me get back to the point where I can actually get stuff done, within a day or two. So, like I said, your deal might be, what you do might be a little different, but this is just one idea. All right, so I promised I would talk about Drupal. This is DrupalCon, right? So the reason why it took so long to get to this point is because Drupal sets very well on a couple of the things that I talked about before. So I wanted to make sure to talk about those first. So I wanted to go through the benefits. Why Drupal for freelancing? So for many of you, this is a foregone conclusion. You're already using Drupal for freelancing. But maybe this will help break down the specific things that you're finding value from. And if you can put words to it, that can help you kind of derive more benefits from it just by knowing what to call it. So anyways, first of all, it's a great portable platform for the morbid. So what I mean by this is that how many freelancers in here have thought, what happens if I die tomorrow? What's going to happen to my clients? How many of you guys have thought that? Okay, so maybe not everybody's as morbid as I am, but I've talked with several freelancers, and they've just independently brought this up. They're like, I want to make sure my clients will be okay if I die tomorrow. It's not like if I decide to not work for them anymore. It's always death. So Drupal, among any framework or CMS, provides this. It gives us a platform that we can use to give to clients and say, hey, if you need help later and I'm not available for whatever reason, then you can find someone that knows Drupal. So this is really valuable. But again, this isn't just Drupal specific. The second thing is that even though Drupal has a learning curve and it takes a while to get to the point where you're actually saving time, you will cross that threshold at some point. And at that point, your time becomes much more valuable because you're getting more done in a shorter period of time. You have more time to work with. So again, that's another thing that's common to most frameworks and CMSs. But here's where things get different with Drupal. So in a lot of CMS, in the major CMSs out there, there's marketplaces for modules and themes. There's just established places you go to buy something to extend the functionality of those platforms. And in Drupal, sharing is really encouraged, sharing for free. And more than encouraged, it's almost demanded. It's not a choice. So for example, when I started working with Drupal, there were a couple of features of my old CMS that I really wanted in Drupal. So I built some modules to wrap around that functionality. And from everything I could tell, that my only option was to put it on Drupal.org. So I did. And a couple things happened as a result. First, people started telling me how horrible my code was. So I had some comments about not meeting coding standards and security flaws and stuff like that. So in one sense that's criticism, but in another, if you look at it another way, that's mentorship. That's free mentorship. People telling you where the gaps are in your knowledge so that you can get better at doing what you want to do. So that's beautiful, right? And those people that made those comments are people I still know that I still have relationships with. So the other thing that happened is that people started using the modules, and I started getting comments like, hey, thank you so much for sharing this. I really appreciate it. This is valuable. And very few things feel as good as building something and working really hard and being passionate about it and putting it out there for free and then having people use it and find value in it. Like that process is just, it's like it is the epitome of helping somebody, right? So that's a wonderful feeling. That sharing process feels really good. Remember the puppies and the baby? Yeah? You guys remember the puppies and the baby? This is a pause just to, see if you guys were listening. Puppies and baby. Yeah. A little random. So yeah, that whole thing is Drupal. Drupal is puppies and babies, just right out of the gate. Okay. So part of this process of sharing means that you end up connecting with people. You end up connecting with people who are mentoring you, people who are using your stuff, your peers, people that you can help. And so you start to build this network. And one of the biggest problems of freelancing is not having a network. It's not having people, not having a community. Well, in this process of sharing, you start to build this community. And then you get exposed to tools like IRC, which is an online chat where at any given time, there's hundreds of Drupalers on there having conversations, answering questions. You can hop on there at any time and ask questions, answer questions, just participate in discussion. And that feeling of just like simultaneously working with hundreds of people across the world just means a lot when you get that sort of solitude feeling when you're working by yourself. Okay, so that networking part of the process ends up beating the solitude, beats it down to a pulp. And then, that was supposed to be funny. I didn't want to make it. I'm not an aggressive person. That wasn't real. It was all acting. So there's also something that's unique in the Drupal space, which is the network of events that happen. So when I went to the CMS Expo, which is a place where a bunch of different content management systems have representatives, I talked with a lot of people there, and they all said that Drupal had this amazing community with this amazing infrastructure of events. So we have Drupal user groups where virtually anybody can connect with people in their local area and develop relationships with people that you can see on a regular basis. And then there's Drupal camps, where you get to maybe meet some of your Drupal heroes, people who you have a lot of respect for, that you get some face-to-face time with. And then there's Drupal cons like this, where you get to see this cross-section of the community from across the globe and really feel like you're part of something special and really interesting. So all of this face time, all of this physical participation with other people means that your online interactions become a lot more fun and a lot more real. And so all of that helps to make you feel like you're part of something, and that's a big deal for increasing your stamina to freelance even longer. Everybody following with that train of logic, even if you're not like on board with it? Oh yeah, so this is a really long list, I'm so sorry. But this is the last bit. The skills that you build working with Drupal in your freelancing work are all skills that you can build when you work on a startup. So this means that everything that you learn there can help you hit the ground running with your startup. And I want to talk more about that. But first I want to talk about Lean. How many people in here aren't quite sure what Lean means? Like Lean startup bit. Okay, so just a couple. I'll summarize it. There's a lot of information out there about Lean. It's kind of a buzzword, really popular, and there's lots of nuances of it, but the basic idea is very simple, which is that the cheaper and faster you can build a product, the more opportunities you have to fail, which is a good thing because that increases your chance of success eventually, right? So, the cheaper side of things comes from two parts, because our expenses have, there's two parts to our expenses. One is human resources, the people that we pay to do work, and then there's the raw materials, the stuff that we need to actually build the things that we're making. So software is an awesome example of cheap because, one, you can build the skills to produce the software yourself, so you don't actually have to hire anybody. You could, but that tends to make it more expensive, right? And also, there's very few raw materials that usually come into play with software. You can even put it out there for free, right? So software is really cheap. It fits the bill that way. The faster also has two facets to it. The first is that the more skills you can and insight into a market that you can bring to the table when you begin creating a startup, the faster you can produce it because you don't have to ramp up. You don't have to, do the research. You don't have to build up the skills. The other part of faster, which I alluded to earlier, is the idea that you want to put something out there as quickly as you can before it's perfect, because you have some ideas of what the market wants. You think that you know, but none of us know. We just have some ideas. So it's better to not spend a bunch of time trying to build something perfect, because when we put it out there, people are going to tell us that there's too much. We don't need all of this stuff. We just needed this particular thing. So if we can put it out there fast, get feedback, then we can iterate through the process of recreating our product until it becomes something that fits the market like a glove. So we get a bunch of feedback. That's good. So one of the epitomes of a not lean startup might be a restaurant. I've known a couple of people who have tried this. The problem with a restaurant is that it's expensive. You guys are all falling asleep. That's totally okay. I love you. Go to sleep. Just close your eyes. So I know a couple of people who have started restaurants. It costs like $100,000 or $200,000, maybe more, to start a restaurant, which means that most people, that's their life savings, or that's at least the savings that they're going to use to try something. So they get one shot at it. And there's so much you can't anticipate. There's so much out of your control. You don't know if another restaurant's going to pop up that's going to be cheaper and better. You don't know if, you just don't know. Like, for example, I lived in this really small town. A friend of ours put up a restaurant called So Healthy, which was really awesome for her to do. But this was a really small town where, it was all diners and stuff. So it did not fly. So anyways, so one shot, you could do it wrong, and that's it. Whereas software, you can keep going until you get something that works. All right, everybody got lean? All right, we're all lean now. Okay, so what good is Drupal to startups? So first of all, like I mentioned before, all the skills that you build while freelancing, you can use while you build your startup. And there's a lot of options that you have in terms of what kind of products you build. So you can touch on virtually any industry with software, and you can build software as a service, you can build information portals, you can build educational tools like I did. You have a lot of options to choose from. And even if you decide that Drupal isn't the software that you're going to use for your eventual product, because some people don't. Some people will use something else because they have a different talent pool available to them or something. You can still use Drupal to rapidly prototype, because you're really familiar. Once you get really familiar with it, you can just quickly try things. And even people who aren't programmers can rapidly build interfaces and model data. Things that are really challenging to do, they can do from the front end, which is super powerful, and you can get a lot of mileage out of that. You can build your own website, which is, might sound a little trivial, but if you've been freelancing and you've done websites for a lot of people, you know the trappings. You know where you can spend a lot of time and it doesn't make sense to spend that time. So you get to fast forward through that whole learning process and build your site really fast and really well. And finally, the network in Drupal is unique because we have developers, but we also have a lot of people who just use Drupal. And those people who just use Drupal represent all kinds of markets. So that when you're at DrupalCon, if you just stand around and you just introduce yourself to random people, you're going to make connections in all kinds of different markets, just naturally. And you'll have something to talk about because we all do Drupal to some degree, or we don't do Drupal and we can talk about that. And so there's a connection that we have with everybody here. And that means you don't have to be a pushy networker. You don't have to be like, hey, this is what I do. That will just you'll naturally talk about what you do because you want to find out if you can help each other. And so this community is really unique that way because we have both sides of the equation. And you'll meet people who will help guide you towards particular product ideas. And that can be really, really nice. Okay. So that's my talk. I just want to leave you with one final thought, which is that really any of us are capable of making transitions. Most of you have made them already, but some of you might be scared or in the middle of a transition that's challenging. So the takeaway I hope you have is that there are things you can do to cultivate joy and happiness in your life. However hokey that sounds, there's a science behind it, and the more you can do that, the more you'll be able to weather those difficult transitions. So feel free to evaluate this session. If you liked it or didn't like it, you have something to say. Also, we have just a few minutes for questions. Feel free to bail too. That's totally fine. There's a microphone in the middle there where you can ask questions. Also, if you don't get the opportunity to ask a question, please send me an email at learn@buildamodule.com. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you thought about this. If you have any anecdotes to add or things that I missed, anything. So I just want to say thank you. All right, question.
Right. So one of the key principles of lean startup is hypotheses and validating that, and of course, failing. So when you were doing build a module, what kind of failures did you have where you predicted the hypothesis wrong and it had you maybe pivot a little bit to get where you're at right now?
Right. That's a good question. So there's been a lot, right? But the one that pops up into my head is that I had a friend that had a lot of success with long form sales pages, where it's just like text, and you pull someone into a story about how amazing whatever it is you have is for them. And so I tried that. I switched out the homepage. Instead of being like links to videos, it was just this long sales letter with like, a sales pitch at the end. And when I looked at the analytics after doing that, my visitor retention just dropped dramatically. And so, that was just, you can try a lot of things rapidly with your site. That was just one thing that I tried. But I've tried lots of different ways to organize stuff on the site. I've tried different ways to market things. Like one time I built this backpack that was like my booth on my back. It had an iPad on it and an antenna with a flag. And I walked around Drupal events like, with this build a module flag and stuff, just thinking, I don't know, like maybe this will help people learn about it or ask me questions or something. I don't know if that really paid off. So those are a couple of things. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi. What do you think of angel investors?
Oh yeah, so investment. So that's something I've stayed away from because it scares me a lot. So I do build a module by myself. I don't have any partners. I don't anticipate having any partners with it. I don't have any employees either. So I kind of run solo because I feel like I get the most satisfaction myself in working that way, in being able to rapidly change without having to consult anybody about it. That's good to me. I like that. But other people know how to work with other people. And so those people can be really successful forming partnerships. And an investor is just a partnership. It's someone who's saying, here, I'm going to give you money and maybe expertise and ideas. And in return, you'll help this, you're going to make this succeed or do your best to do it. And so for me, like I've always stayed away from it because I don't want to be stuck in a relationship that's going to make me miserable for a long time. But I know people who have had a lot of success. Like Pantheon has a lot of investors, right? And they've been, as far as I know, they've been really happy about that relationship. And so there's success stories out there. And so it's kind of, I think, you have to kind of know yourself, right? If that sounds good to you, if that sounds exciting, then do it. If you're doing it just for the money, like you may find yourself in a hard place later. That's my thought anyways.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So your startup it's essentially a product company. Like you distribute these knowledge artifacts and it's like that's your product, which seems to be a little bit more easier to apply the principles of lean startup to a product company. Could you perhaps talk a little bit about how, if you're purely services and you sell billable hours, how to apply those same principles of lean startup to that services scenario?
Yeah, so I'm, as you know, just hearing this, my experiences are really limited, right? So all I have to talk about are my thoughts and also other people I know who have done these things. So the people I know who have been the most successful running like web firms, for example, they figure out what the system is to basically make their services a product. It's not like sold the same way. You're still selling it as services, but you build it as something that sustains itself, that you don't need to be in there managing it. You have even a general manager that takes care of even the management side of it. So some people I know have development firms that completely run by themselves. So I think that's the goal. At that point, it's sort of, in a way, it's sort of a productized service because, you're able to expand it without the input of time yourself. So, which I think is the ultimate goal.
Just a quick follow-on, but it seems like it's harder to apply the principles of failing fast, right? Where like a product thing, you put something out there, nobody buys it for a week, it didn't work. But a service may take 6 months, 12 months to deliver. It's harder to get faster learnings in that way.
Yeah. So most people I know, they start doing it themselves. They start by doing it themselves. They figure out certain processes that work with one person. Then they bring another employee on, which is a big deal, right? That first employee is a big deal. And then the processes have to change, and you try to offload as much as possible to the employee. And then you continue to expand and evolve the process as you go. And at some point, you have the right number of people to take over every role that's needed for that to work. So it's a process. If you decide you're just going to start doing that, I think that would be really hard. I can't imagine a lot of people being successful with that right away. That's kind of a one-shot deal because you're hiring a bunch of people. Now you have all this payroll, right? It's really expensive. So that's the iterative process. It sounds the same to me as the lean thing. You start small, you put something out there, and you evolve it until you have a bigger team that's giving exactly what's needed out there.
Hi, earlier you were saying you moved from employeeship to, you put a website out there, and people or companies or clients started going to it. Can you describe the transition, or what drew them to it, and how you made that transition?
To freelancing, like to doing freelancing work, or?
Yeah, kind of in between, the part where you put the website out and clients started coming to it, and that, I guess it's a...
Yeah. So there...
Whatever you say.
Okay, so there were 2 points where I put a website out and things changed, right? One was when I went into freelancing, and then the other was when I put the prototype of Build a Module out. So with the freelancing side, are you more interested, just real quick, in the transition into freelancing or the transition into the startup? Okay. So my website actually played a big role at the time because I learned everything I could about SEO and really targeted the local market, so I could come up for web development Idaho, Boise, Idaho. There wasn't huge competition at the time. I think it's a lot harder everywhere now to make a dent in that to begin with. So I ended up getting some leads through that, but most of my initial leads were from direct connections. So I just go to different networking meetings, anything where there was going to be people, I went to and met people. But the website eventually played a big role in sort of generating those leads. But it was a lot about SEO, about showing up in the search engines. I didn't do a lot of paid search engine stuff. But I put stuff. I tried to build a portfolio, a small portfolio first. Did a website for my mom and logos for friends and things like that to have something up. And just randomly, people would just would call, and I'd get some jobs that way. I don't know if that's answering your question at all. That's good. Okay.
Hi. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
I just have a quick comment, kind of toward the last question. With trying to change or to frame your services as a product, I was actually talking to someone in the construction industry, and it kind of seems obvious after I kind of put it all together, and basically the idea would be to make things into goalposts and tie your client interactions and maybe your billing into that, so that you have those opportunities to fail frequently throughout something like a 6-month project, and then you don't get too far before you realize that, or you can do these audits midway through instead of doing all this work and then coming to the end and go, oh, we had different requirements than things like that. It's easier to find out earlier.
Right. Yeah. Awesome comment. Yep. So yeah, I see that happen a lot. It makes sense to break it up into sections. That way you learn, one, do you have the skills and the resources to do it? And second, will the client actually pay for it? All right, so one more question.
Actually, I just had a comment also.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
With the freelancing stuff, so I did freelancing for a long time, and actually got my first actual employment gig 6 months ago. It's the first job in 12 years that I had, but it was only because everything matched what I need, and it's really great. But one of the things that actually you mentioned and kind of, I think, jumped over real quickly, that looking back, if I did things differently doing freelancing, and if I ever do it again, I will do differently. was you said when you came back you were doing more like subcontracting for some other shops. So like personally, one of the things for me as a freelancer that was probably the most difficult, not skill-wise, but just mentally and emotionally, was doing the business management stuff, getting work, doing marketing, doing invoicing, tracking people down and getting them to pay you. I mean, it's grueling, and that's the cost of doing business. That is not necessarily what we want to be doing. So given the market now and how everybody that you know is trying to hire somebody, you could write your own ticket if you wanted to get a job, but I think a really smart thing to do is to actually go out and make contact with a bunch of different firms and say, I'm not looking for a job per se, I'm looking for you know, a longer term contract, be it 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, what have you, and setting up maybe a couple of those. And then you get that kind of variability and that challenge in different areas. You get the interaction with different people, but you don't have to have the burden all on yourself of trying to go out and do all the marketing and getting clients and stuff. So that's something that I would do differently, and maybe sometime I will. So.
Cool. Thanks, Ron. All right. So thanks again for you guys for coming. Have an excellent rest of the DrupalCon.
From VOA Learning English, this is Technology. 23-year-old Rio Savianto sells face masks for about 30 cents each in central Jakarta, Indonesia. He earns enough money to own a cell phone that permits him to visit websites like Facebook and Twitter, as well as finding game applications or apps. Rio Savianto says the average person in Indonesia has a cell phone. He likes having one because he can talk to his family when he is away from home. And he is pleased that he can use it to listen to music. Rio's phone has a keypad that makes it look like a BlackBerry. It is known as a feature phone or smartphone light. That is because it is less costly and cannot do as many things as more advanced phones like the Apple iPhone. These devices make up the majority of cell phones sold around the world. They are successful in places like Indonesia, where some smartphones cost $700 or more. Although many lower-income users are new to smartphones, they are quickly learning to use the technology. Phone manufacturer Nokia offers a service called Life Tools. For a monthly payment, Nokia sends text messages to farmers. They tell about weather conditions, crop prices, agricultural news, and give advice. Local businessman Aldi Hirio Protomo has developed a way for store owners to sell things from prepaid cell phone minutes to life insurance through text messages. A company called Ruma developed the technology. It is working on a system that will inform people about jobs in their area. Last year, the French company Semiocast reported that Jakarta was the world's top tweeting city, ahead of Tokyo and London. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn.